Humanitarian design is a design that is adopted as a principal purpose the service of humanitarian needs in cases of emergency, disaster, mass displacement, mass migration, things like that, as a departure from the traditional market base of architecture. I would argue, as well as I think most of my fellow humanitarian architects would argue, that all architecture is in a sense humanitarian, because the built environment determines so much of what we are as a people. Where we go to school, the hospital we were born in, all of these things are in some way related to the design decisions that are being made by architects. So we have an opportunity not only to practice humanitarian architecture in disaster zones and refugee camps, but we also have an opportunity to make architecture more humane in everybody else's everyday life. Our built environment, the buildings around us, are actually the first line of defense in our public health system, right? So the way that we design our buildings is probably the reason that we don't have outbreaks of cholera anymore, right? Or outbreaks of Legionnaire's disease or these sorts of things. So the way that we design buildings and the sophisticated ways that we've learned over the decades and the centuries to design buildings well actually has numerous, multitudinous effects on our human health and our advancement as a civilization. Most of the time, I think people don't appreciate all these functions that buildings are actually doing, and that would extend to, I think, governments, as well as everyday people walking the street. The built environment, the buildings in which we live in and go to school in, are responsible for so much of our personal wealth, our personal health, our psychological security, our cultural preservation. Those things we consider fundamental human rights. So the buildings that create those conditions should also be considered a fundamental human right. And I would think that most architects, every architect that I know, considers the right to safe and human habitation a fundamental human right.
Audio Jungle.